This is Black Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. Carrie Ann Williams. I'm a psychiatrist practicing in Massachusetts. And this is a podcast that's about everything related to mental wellness in the Black community and beyond. You've heard the recommendation before to get rest. When someone tells you to rest, what do you think of? Most of us think about taking a break from work or laying down to take a nap, getting more sleep at night. Some of us think of rest as taking a vacation, going somewhere nice, being physically away from the daily grind. The question is, though, does sleep and vacation make us feel rested? I think we keep hoping that they do, but quite often we return from vacation feeling as though we still need more time off. And many of us take more time to sleep, but we still find ourselves feeling tired. In today's episode, I'll share with you the insights that I got from a book called Sacred Rest. It's a book that was published in 2017 and written by Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith, who's an internal medicine physician. And what drew me to this book was that she rightly pointed out that rest is not the same thing as sleep or vacation time. She highlights 7 different types of rest. And as individuals, we may have a need for different types of rest. So in this podcast episode, you need to ask yourself the question, what type of rest do I need? Here are the 7 different types of rest that Dr. Dalton-Smith highlights in her book. Physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest, social rest, sensory rest, and creative rest. She starts off by laying the groundwork. Rest goes deeper than just your biological need to sleep, or your practical need to take time away from work. Rest is connected to your soul and your spirit. She says that rest occurs when we are purposefully reviving the parts of our life that we regularly deplete. Rest is restoration. So, in what area of your life do you feel depleted? In what area of your life do you need restoration? The first type of rest is physical rest. This is the kind of rest that you need if you are chronically low in energy, experience frequent muscle pain and soreness, find yourself getting sick often with common colds, and rely on substances like caffeine to give you energy or like alcohol to help you to sleep. True physical rest is a type of rest that restores a sense of calmness to your body and relieves tension in your muscles. What is your body telling you? Are you ignoring your body's signals? If your body is physically depleted, you need physical interventions for restoration. So physical rest can be active. It's not just the absence of activity, but the presence of restorative activity. Restorative physical rest includes things like stretching, walking, shifting your position during the day if you have a sedentary job. In terms of stillness, it could include laying down for 5 minutes and focusing your attention on your 5 senses. The second type of rest is mental rest. Our minds are cluttered with input from work, school, social media, and our own internal thought life. Due to the body's priority of protecting itself, the mind naturally tends to focus on things that are potentially threatening and therefore anxiety-provoking and stressful. The author encourages us to let go of those thoughts that are not producing a positive effect in our life. Do you find yourself ruminating? Do you find yourself replaying things that have happened? Do you find yourself reliving events that you've already lived through? Do you engage in escapism, which is fantasizing about being anywhere else but here? This overactivity of the brain can lead to mental fatigue. A mental fog can affect our memory and our productivity. So, are you mentally depleted? Are you in need of mental restoration? Dr. Dalton-Smith first recommends taking an inventory of your schedule and identifying specific items in your schedule that deplete you mentally. So don't just say, going to work depletes me mentally. Try to be more specific. Where possible, confine those particular activities or tasks to a limited time block in your day that has a beginning and an end. And if possible, schedule that time block earlier in the day when you have more mental reserve and your mind is less fatigued. Second, take an inventory of your thought life. What aspects of your thought life contribute to your mental depletion? In what way do you need to bring restoration to your thought life? Be intentional about making a plan to meditate on the things that pour into you rather than take energy away from you. The third type of rest is emotional rest. Many of us give ourselves emotionally consoling, encouraging, empathizing. You may be at a place where you have reached or exceeded your capacity to give more of yourself emotionally. The author speaks about how sometimes instead of processing our own emotions, we find ourselves just performing, becoming a different person when around certain people or in certain places. Emotional depletion can affect our ability to be our authentic selves. We don't have the emotional reserve to face rejection or shame or conflict. She mentions that sometimes in our attempts to hide, in our attempts to rest emotionally, we end up hiding. And so I like this quote from her book. In her book, she says, hiding looks like rest. It shields, protects, and covers. But unlike rest, hiding drains. It pulls apart and separates. Rest rejoins. It is a reunion with your best self. You may be emotionally depleted if you feel depressed or angry when you think about your life, if you avoid new things due to insecurity and self-doubt, if you focus on failures and flaws, you're hard on yourself, you worry a lot, and you frequently apologize for yourself, always feeling a need to clarify. Start off by taking an inventory of your social environment. Are you around people who emotionally deplete you? People who are pessimistic and complain all the time? Do you feel worse after being around certain people? Secondly, are you comparing yourself to everyone else? Comparison is a thief of joy. You will never be the same as anyone else. It is a mentally draining exercise in futility. No one else is like you. Lastly, emotional freedom goes hand in hand with the ability to be vulnerable. In the right situations, emotional vulnerability is restorative. The fourth type of rest is spiritual rest. The author references that we are made up of body, mind, and spirit, and we all experience brokenness of spirit. Spiritual depletion is often a sign of spiritual disconnection. In what way has your spirit been wounded? Is your faith broken? Is your heart bleeding? The author mentions that often spiritual pain can become the enemy, and therefore we seek to avoid hurting. But there can be no healing without pain. You need spiritual rest if you feel a lack of motivation and meaning in life, if you feel a decreased sense of satisfaction and accomplishment, if you feel numb and distant from God. So, how can you experience spiritual restoration? One way is to focus on the love of God and to show his love to others. Pouring love on others is spiritually restorative. You can also acknowledge to yourself the ways in which you are spiritually depleted and spend time in meditation and prayer. The fifth type of rest is social rest. Are you feeling socially depleted? I'll tell you as an introvert that relationships can be quite depleting. Do you leave social interactions feeling empty or feeling full? Social rest or social restoration involves reconnection to meaningful social relationships. Dr. Dalton-Smith says social rest is about making space for those relationships that revive you. You may need social rest if you feel alone or detached from others, if you find it hard to maintain close friendships, in some cases, if you prefer online friendships. To restore yourself socially, you need to prioritize face-to-face time with others. You need to take time to listen to others. And you need to be intentional about connecting with people who have similar interests, which helps to foster a sense of closeness. The next type of rest is sensory rest. Are you experiencing sensory overload? On a daily basis, we are constantly bombarded, particularly if you live in a city, with sights, smells, salty foods, loud sounds, and so on. You may be in need of a sensory rest. For example, if you have become desensitized to aromas that others seem to be able to smell easily, if you believe natural foods have no flavor, and you don't enjoy experiences like fireworks or concerts. If you're experiencing eye strain, you may need a visual rest. It may be time to unplug from some of the external stimulation. Pick a time each day, maybe 10 minutes or more, where you turn everything off. Test which types of sensory input are either desensitized or overly sensitized. Find ways over time to downgrade your sensory input. The final type of rest is creative rest. This is not necessarily about being creative. You may need creative restoration if you find it difficult to enjoy things in nature or in their natural state. If you feel you're being selfish when you consider doing something for yourself. And in some cases, if you don't feel as though your work is of value or that others appreciate your contributions. You can experience creative restoration by scheduling time to be in nature and allowing yourself to soak in it rather than pressuring yourself to do something or achieve something while you're out in nature. You can also work with your body's natural rhythms to discover the times of day that you are most productive and creative. So, as you listened to this podcast, what types of rest resonated with you? In her book, Dr. Dalton-Smith encourages us to tackle the excuses that pull us away from restorative activity. What are those excuses? Do you fear change? Do you fear uncertainty? Do you fear failure? Do you fear? Your fear is leading you down the path of burnout. There are many things that will help you along the way on your journey to rest and restoration. Boundaries, emotional boundaries, sensory boundaries, physical boundaries, social boundaries, spiritual boundaries, mental boundaries, and creative boundaries. You can read more about that in her book. You will also need to spend some time in reflection and contemplation. The last thing that I'll say is that the author mentions something called the gift of permission. That really struck a chord with me because as a physician, I'm trained to deny myself in the service of others. That's not a bad thing, as a profession does require us to focus on patients and on helping others. But this meant that when it came time for me to help myself, I needed to be intentional about giving myself permission to rest. The author says the gift of permission removes the guilt associated with rest. Rest is not laziness. She also says rest ruins our reputation for being superhuman. Rest testifies to our humanity and our need for daily replenishing, our need for daily bread. A difficult task for those malnourished from years of fasting from rest. Dear listener, will you give yourself permission today to truly rest? And that's it for today's episode. The book that I referenced today again is Sacred Rest by Dr. Saundra Dalton-Smith. She has an assessment tool that you can take online called the Personal Rest Deficit Assessment Tool. And it helps you to determine the areas in which you need rest. You can go to restquiz.com. And this episode is not sponsored or anything. I just really enjoyed the book and I enjoyed the concept of having 7 different types of rest. You can do a 30-day sacred rest challenge by going to ichoosemybestlife.com. And each day you'll be sent a little encouragement to help you to remember to rest. So what do you guys think about the 7 types of rest? I hope that you will give yourself permission to invite restoration into your life and to set the boundaries necessary to make that plan successful. So have a great week, and I'll talk with you next time. Take care.